And of course, joining us at this time is a lady who is no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a special good evening to political scientist Dr. Indira Rampersad. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, good evening, Mikee K. Quite the activist, aren't you?
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Yeah, we're heading into a general election. I think the announcement of the extension, that one-year contract extension for the Commissioner of Police, it has somewhat been surprising. Well, not really surprising, but one would think that moving forward, the announcement would have been to really try to arrest this crime situation, perhaps even set up a task force to deal with home invasions and everything else as far as these criminal elements have us as citizens under siege. I mean, why? Why would government make a decision, with an unpopular decision, with just mere months away from an election?
Well, there are a number of reasons for that. You know, we seem to have a culture of promoting the non-performers or the poor performers. So that is one that I would prefer. The other reason is I think that the government is probably privileging loyalty and commitment to government or to themselves rather than competence and efficiency. Because you said surprising, but I would use a stronger word than that. I think it's shocking. It's a slap in the face of the people of Trinidad and Tobago that a commissioner of police was renewed for 1 year, didn't perform, and herself admitted that she didn't meet her target, and then come back and get another year. So the population is looking on in this, and you know, this is something we have to speak out against. Because you know, you're wondering, yes, you are right, what is the reason? And then this is what I said, we are actually rewarding with renewal, sometimes with promotion, the poor performance and the non-performers. Then that is the culture we are inculcating in this country.
Well, and it's just not a feeling. I mean, this is real. I mean, when you look at the stats, when you look at everything that's been documented, in December of 2022, the Commissioner of Police said that when she was acting as Commissioner of Police, she set herself a murder reduction target of 20% in 6 months. But however, in May 2023, she conceded that the reality was a 10% increase in the murder toll. So again, it just simply does not add up.
And it is a direct indictment to her reign as Commissioner of Police if the murder toll is going up. But it is not just the murder toll that is going up, it is the heinous and frequency of the crimes. You know, it's like now we're living in perpetual fear. We keep talking about this all the time. In every media, I'm seeing COP wants spiritual intervention. So is it that she is going to seek spiritual intervention now that she's been renewed to for us to get some alleviation and some relief from the scourge of crime in the country? You know, the population really needs to speak out about this. Give somebody else a chance now. If you failed, you've been given the opportunity. You've given more than a fair opportunity. You've been renewed already. You failed. You admitted to not meeting your target and not performing up to par. Then the time is now right and time is ripe for basically to give someone else another chance. Now, there is a general election, so one is also trying to understand the rationale of the government. But, you know, a day in politics is a lifetime, and we have some time to go before that election is constitutionally due. We are not sure if it will be called early, so that is, you know, we have to wait and see.
And you're right. There are certain indicators, but we won't get into that. But going back to what you said, yes, and I think coming into office, we were all feeling that sense of, you know, with solidarity in the spiritual realm. You know, yes, it was all about praying and what have you. But understand, it's not about taking away the guns from the police and arming them with Bibles. This is real. We are talking about people who are under siege by criminal elements in their homes, people jumping your walls, kicking down your front door, coming in, violating your family sexually, and and adding insult to that, they're also lighting you a fire. And the stories go on. Every day we hear these stories and we ask ourselves, and I don't know if we've come to a point where we're immune, that we no longer expect anything different at this time.
Well, I sincerely hope we're not immune, because it can happen to any one of us or any one of our friends or relatives, you know, in the not too distant future, unfortunately. But, you know, one of the things that are being asked, and it's, you know, it's very heavily being discussed in social media, is whether the government really cares. The Prime Minister is abroad at this time, and the country is definitely in crisis. The Minister of National Security has virtually abdicated his responsibilities, stating that this is not the job of the Minister of National Security to deal with crime. So then who is going to deal with it? And the country is in pandemonium. It's in chaos, utter chaos. You know, this situation is unbearable. We just cannot go forward. And it seems that the powers that be, those in authority, those who were elected to protect us, you know, and to keep us safe, have failed miserably. So we are very much in a failed state.
And you're right. I mean, and when you look at some of these stories where we're reading that criminal gangs have set up monitoring systems, CCTV cameras, monitoring the police, when it should be the other way around. We were told by the former Attorney General, who is now functioning in the capacity of local government minister, that legislation would have assisted in letting us know who are the gang members, the criminal elements, where they sleep, whatever activities they involved in, but that in itself has failed. I mean, have we reached a point now where it just seems that we just have to show the white flag and say, listen, we give up? Do we even have that luxury?
Well, it's called lawlessness, and the rule of law no longer prevails. I think that is what is happening. When you see criminals setting up CCTV camera in a police station, I mean, how are they accessing these buildings? How are they accessing these areas? Because you and I can't just walk into a police station just so and do something like that. How are these criminals doing it? What kind of authority do these underground elements have? What kind of power do they have? Where are they getting this power from? In addition to where are they getting the weapons? I mean, that's another issue to be discussed, the arms and the ammunition. Where are they getting this? And I think it's today in Port of Spain, we saw machine guns ringing out throughout the city. And you're wondering, where are they getting these high-powered weapons from? How are they coming into the country?
But is it that the administration is totally out of sync? I mean, not looking at the fact that the crime rate is the worst it has ever been in decades. And knowing your responsibility is that of securing the lives of the citizens. Is it that it's so disconnected, or, as you mentioned before, simply do not care? And what does that do for us as citizens?
Well, I think they have no crime plan, which I have been, you know, this is a mantra I have been repeating. Mikee K, you know, interview after interview, I've been talking about there's no crime plan. So you have no crime plan. You're not developing one. You're not trying to formulate one, because you need a multi-stakeholder, multi-sector approach, and you have to bring in the international, regional, and national stakeholders to be part of this. We have no crime plan. So to me, it would suggest that if the population is calling over and over and over again for a crime plan, and there are people dying all around us as if we are in Gaza, then one has to conclude that they do not care. That's the only conclusion I can come to. And somehow they believe that they will be able to, despite the environment, they will be able to, by whatever means, whatever strategies they will use in 2025, still be able to pull a general election.
And again, one would think that you would go into elections knowing the importance of it, you know, with a track record of actually doing something, or at least showing that you're serious enough to make the changes and adjustments at a time which is very critical. And that is this time. I mean, the criminal elements are so confident of not being caught, not being prosecuted, that every day they seem to stretch and try to push that envelope as far as possible to simply say that, hey, we are in control.
Yes, so if you are in the eve of a general election, and I'm saying, I'm using the term eve, you know, carefully, cautiously, because like I said, there's some time to go, unless it's called early. But even so, it would be a little more than a year that the election is constitutionally due. What a prudent political party or government, incumbent government, would do is you would have a list of priorities. What are the issues facing the country? How best can I deal with these issues in order to satisfy the electorate to put me back in power? And you know, everybody knows that crime is the #1 issue which should be on that list. You are incumbent. You have the resources. You have the capacity to deal with it. When you are head of government, you have connections regionally and internationally with other heads of government and heads of state. You know, so the system that we operate in, the Westminster model of governance, doesn't allow much power for the opposition. You know, that's why we call it first past the post, winner takes it all. Whoever win the election, even if it's by 1 seat, they get so much power that they can interact, engage the international and the regional community. So they, for example, to call election observers. It is the government that has the authority to do that. The opposition can make the call nationally, but the opposition does not have the clout to approach election observers, let's say the OAS observers or the Commonwealth observers, to ask them to observe an election. So what I am saying is, if you are in power and you have the authority to make change, when you see a population in grief, a population crying out, a population in fear, and you're going into an election in this mode with gunshots ringing out all around the people, something is incredulous here. Something is not right, Mikee K.
I agree with you. I mean, what we've seen over the years is a lot of legislation, and the criminal elements are quite aware that legislation does not solve crime. And so they go about their business, and, you know, it's quite clear that legislation can pass. But what are you actually doing on the ground to arrest the situation? And we are, I mean, really and truly, it really boggles me that one would just go into an election with this hanging over their head, which is the fact that you did not do everything to secure the lives of the citizens. And
that speaks to the gangs and the guns and the robberies and the murders. But then we also have that other issue of white collar crime, Mikee K, and this whole phenomenon with the Auditor General as well. You know, so the population is looking on and they're wondering what is happening here. You know, some significant amount of money not being properly accounted for. And then you're setting up a committee himself unto himself, and that the government has been setting up committee after committee after committee, and this is their modus operandi. Set up a committee and expect the problem to be resolved. It doesn't work that way.
No, you're right.
It doesn't work that way, and the people are not being fooled by these committees, because it's himself unto himself. Cabinet appointed committees are the government appointing committees for themselves.
And you're right, because even for the CCTV cameras, there's a team set up, when in fact the Minister of National Security made it clear that there's the SSA, there are detectives in the TTPS. Then why set up a team if it is that you have the resources and the personnel there to deal with these situations? So another team. And looking on to all of this, it makes you wonder, what are the government priorities going into this election? But I want to switch gears quite quickly as time. The UNC announced that the NATEX elections will occur on June 15th. And of course, there's individuals who have been asking for this, saying that it's constitutionally due, saying that the time has come for changes to be made. What is up for grabs here? What are we looking at, and how important is it?
Well, it's not the political leadership. That is not due until next year. I believe next year, October. So we may have a general election before we have the election for the leader of the UNC. I'm not saying opposition leader because that's a different portfolio, but the leader of the party, leader of the UNC. Some people conflate this. The opposition is actually an arm of the government. The UNC is a political party. So that election for, for the leadership, Kamala Prasad Bisesa remains leader until there is an election for the leadership, which would be in 2025. The June 15th election is for the other portfolios that you have there. You have chairman, I believe you would have deputy political leader. You would have treasurer, secretary, whatnot, general secretary. So you're going to have these, when you say NATEX, that means national executive elections for the executive posts. So now they've been calling, but the UNC has been steadfastly holding their internal elections. They have been calling and much ado about nothing about this internal election, in my opinion, because they have always, upheld that, and they've called elections. Sometimes it's not always possible to do it on a specific date or particular date that some people may want it to be, but they have had it. They have been very democratic in this respect in calling the elections. Now they're saying now that the election date is called, it's not just about election, it's about the list. So, well, there will be that. It's a competition. There going to be mudslinging. There's going to be infighting. But at the end of the day, there will be a winner. There will be winners and there will be losers. And one hopes that the democratic process will play out comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the two main parties, of course, everyone knows the UNC and the PNM. I mean, they have a strong foundation, a strong base. Do you see this whole process rattling that base and somewhat making the party weak?
No, I don't think so. I think the bases of both parties are pretty much intact, and they're going to come out in droves and vote in a general election. I expect the UNC base to come out and vote in the internal election as well. No, internal elections are just that. They're internal elections. You are electing people who are going to represent you at the party level, and that's what they are. And it's not, you don't get a high voter turnout, extremely high voter turnout generally. But I don't see it rattling per se. It's early enough. Where we are in May, that will be held in June. If the election is held at the end of the year, I think it's enough time for them to settle down and get the act together. If it's held next year, even better.
Yeah. Is it a bit surprising that some of the same people who have been outspoken, who have been airing much of this in the public domain, they themselves have filed nominations to return to function in the capacity of whether it be MP and what have you? Does that seem surprising?
It's not. It's somewhat strange, I would say. It's a strange phenomenon that you would be calling and sort of vitriolic attack, even on the leader. And the very leader is the one who would be part of a committee or team that would be selecting persons who file nominations for seats. So what do you expect? I'm wondering why. Why would you have, they don't see it as attack, but it was not nice. It was not nice when the laundry was being washed in the public and all this outcry for elections. And there were even calls for her to step down until they realized they couldn't do that because she was democratically elected. And they were even calling for internal because they thought that the political leadership was up for grabs. So they themselves, I think, didn't even understand the dynamics of their own political party. A very strange behavior, I would say, very, very strange behavior that you will file a nomination and a very leader who has to nominate you is the one who's been coming under fire from you.
Yes, indeed. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Well, what I want to say is that these are very trying times. The situation is unbearable in terms of the crime. So the country is crying out. The country is living in fear. We really hope that the leaders get their act together and do something about it. Mikee K, I still like to remain positive. But what I can say is that I think the people are bursting at the seams. They can't take it anymore. And very soon we are going to see reactions to that. We've already been seeing it with some of the protest movements, and it extends to other disgruntlement, in terms of salary and wages negotiations, trade unions at 2% and 2% and 4%, which people cannot survive on in these times. So it's a lot of things combined: a high crime rate, high inflation, cost of living escalating, high unemployment. The situation is not a pleasant one, and you're going to see a lot of people thinking about migrating as well.
All right, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. Best of luck to you and your entire team, and we'll be checking in with you periodically to touch on these major issues. Do enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much for having me. You're most welcome.
Thank you.